All right, so today we are going to talk about the monologue criteria breakdown. Basically, this document here is like your Bible for making sure that you address all of the criteria properly and what you're going to be speaking about in your monologue. So, if you use this and you follow it and while you're writing your monologue, it'll definitely help you, but it'll also really help you when you're editing. Because when I'm marking your monologue, these are the things that I'm looking for. So in my mind, I am looking for ticking these things off as I mark you. I can't mark you for anything that isn't on the criteria sheet. So the first one is about creating perspectives and representations of concepts, times, places, and identities. So the first whole criteria is really about your knowledge application. Have you shown your understanding of the character, the film, the contextual and social time period, um, and the historical events relevant to your character? So the first dot point is talking about, do you sound like your character? Now, here we don't mean have you put on a German accent. This is more about the tone and the language that they use. Is it authentic to who that character is? So you might use some German words. So instead of and, you might use the word und. If you say no, you might say nein. You might use some German words that have been used by the characters in the movie. So hopefully you wrote some of those down while you're watching it. If not, it might help you to watch the film again and write down any German words that are commonly used throughout it by the characters. Um, Use short, sharp sentences, including fragments as well, particularly if you're going to be a character like Rudy. He's quite young, he's innocent and immature. He wouldn't be using complex similes and metaphors, whereas like Max would be someone who would. Max might go and describe, the stars as twinkling and glittering like a beautiful tapestry or something like that. Whereas Rudy wouldn't be speaking in that kind of manner because he isn't as old as Max. He isn't as well read as Max as well. So remember, books are life to Max, whereas Rudy, he's more interested in playing soccer and hanging out with his friends and Liesel. So, are you showing their perspective? Are you putting yourself in their shoes? Do you talk about their values and beliefs, not yours, because you are the character? So, talking about concepts and issues that are important to your character. So, Rudy, for example, loves Jesse Owens. So, Rudy might be confused about why he's not allowed to dress up like Jesse Owens and why that old man dragged him by the ear and his dad made him scrub the grease off his face. So Rudy would be doing a lot of questioning and talking about thoughts and feelings, but he wouldn't be talking about like Hitler's ideology or anything like that because he's a child. Whereas Max, on the other hand, has a copy of Mein Kampf, and Max might be talking about some of the ideas and issues in there. And that's your opportunity to show your understanding of not only the character, but their attitudes, values, and beliefs in that historical time period, in that social context. What is it like being that person in that particular time period? So there's a lot that is involved in that particular criteria. The next one is about cultural assumptions, attitudes, and beliefs. So this one here is, have you authentically shown your character's point of view? Have you given an insight into who they are that fits with who they are in the actual movie? Then this one's really important because this is part of filling your gap and silence. Have you given some sort of new insight into the character? Have you revealed something that we don't know, but maybe thoughts or feelings or something that has happened that we are not privy to? We haven't found out yet. So you're filling that there. Again, do you show your characters' philosophies and ideologies? So, Rudy is not really on Team Hitler. He's a little bit innocent and ignorant, doesn't really know what's going on, questioning. Liesel, for example, in the same sort of boat. She doesn't seem to be somebody who believes in Hitler fully. Whereas you might have Franz, he's a bit of a diehard Hitler fan. He's part of the Hitler Youth. As Rudy and Liesel are, but he seems to be more about getting on board with that sort of fanatical kind of attitude. So he would be somebody who would be praising Hitler and doing everything they can to be a perfect Aryan, whereas Rudy and Liesel don't seem to be inclined. They're kind of just going because they have to. Well, they don't even really seem to have an opinion about it, to be honest. So, do you show your understanding of the character's beliefs, but you reveal something that we don't know as long as it's authentic to the character? So, it's a little bit tricky to do that, but you need to think about their values and beliefs, and is what you're talking about relevant? I wouldn't go talking about things like, gender roles and things like that, because that's a modern concept. Whereas in the past, it was very normal for the woman to stay at home and care for the household and the children while the men went off to work. And so a character like Rosa wouldn't be talking about how she really wants to go and get some work and look after, be a working woman and stop looking after the household. That wasn't really a societal kind of aspect or way of thinking in those time periods. So you've got to think about what's accurate to the time period as well. Right, so the next one is aesthetic features and stylistic devices. So these are important and you need to make sure they're relevant to the character. So Rudy's not going to be talking in really complex similes and metaphors. He might be using simple idioms like, I wish Liesel would get to the point. Get to the point is, some imagery there that makes you think about, um, how Liesel feels in a simple way. It's kind of like using an idiom, like, oh, to kill two birds with one stone or something like that. Whereas Liesel and Max are using more beautiful language, similes and metaphors and description because they're so well read. You might introduce some motif, some reoccurring ideas. So a motif is a dominant or reoccurring idea or theme that runs through your monologue. So you might be talking about loss or abandonment, or you might be talking about fear or something like that. You might include reference to books and words and the importance of them. You might have the accordion, stars, um, and darkness and light that are woven through your monologue to show your understanding of the symbolism used within it as well. The language, is it relevant to your character? Are you revealing thoughts and feelings? Remember, in your monologue, thoughts and feelings are the most important thing to be revealing, because that's what we want in a monologue. It's like we are reading the mind of the character, and you're setting it after something important has happened, a jump off event, I suppose, if you like, where something has happened, and then you are going to jump off from there and be that character in that 4 to 6 minute period of time where you are reflecting on what has happened. What do you think? What do you feel? How are you working through that? And if you can have some development in your thoughts and feelings where you come to some sort of realization, even better. Stage directions are really important. Make sure they're in bold and brackets. Think through what your character is doing while they're thinking, and you can indicate what facial expressions you're using, hand gestures, things like that. The stage directions that, like, if it was to be, this was like a script given to an actor, they would know what they should be feeling or overtly showing in their expression in their face and what they're actually doing. All right, so that there is all your knowledge application criteria. So there's quite a lot in that, and it's a big criteria that you're marked on. So it's about, do you know the character? Do you know the context of the time, historically and socially? Have you made the character authentic and reliable? Do you understand their values and beliefs? Have you spoken like them and in a way that they would come across if it was just another snippet from the movie that was included? All right, let's look at organization and development. So this one here is all about your structure. So have you started in the present and then gone into the past? and then go back to the present at the end. Now, when you're in the past, you're reflecting on things that have happened. Remember, you need to reveal something that the audience doesn't know. I would be reflecting on 2 to 3 events. So you don't have to have big, complex, deep thoughts about particular events, and you can jump from one idea to another because it is a monologue, which are basically your internal thoughts and feelings. And obviously, they're not always flowing in a logical manner. We don't think like that. Our thoughts jump off from different parts and trigger other thoughts. Make sure that you are trying to be engaging to your audience. Don't write something that's boring that we already know. We want to know something that's interesting. So, for example, if you're Max, your jump off point might be after he's left the Hubermans and his experience of how he got to where he goes next. Or it could be the gap that you're filling after he left his mother, and the point that you set your monologue might be when he's sick under the stairs and he's reflecting on how hard it was to leave his mother and what he went through after leaving her. Because we don't know how he got to the Hubermans or how long it took him to get there. So you can fill that gap in and show us what happened in that past section. Okay, but remember, finish in the present. So present, past, present. Make sure it's in first person. Obviously, you need to stay in character. You are the character. It's not a short story. Make sure you've got stage directions throughout. I would try to have, I don't know, one every 3 to 4 sentences, but try to make them useful and why they're actually there. Have you picked, so selection and synthesis of subject matter, so have you picked the best moment in time to present your character's perspective? So remember, your character is on their own. It's a thinking point for them. It's a reflective point for them. It's not in the middle of a conversation or in the middle of something happening. It's when they are by themselves and they've got time to think and reflect, right? So set it after an event has happened, and you can only talk about things that have happened in the past. Obviously, they can't tell the future. They're not a clairvoyant, so they can't tell what's going to happen in the future. They can only discuss what has happened in their lives up until that point. A bit like you can only do that with your own life as well. So make sure that you are within the word limit. This is really important in senior. There is no plus or minus 10%. You need to hit the word count. Okay, so please don't submit something even with 10 words over. You have to try to hit the word count almost to the word. So no more than 800 words. All right, does your monologue flow? Does it have some sort of overall idea? Do you reference light and dark? Is your main overall theme or idea abandonment and loss? Is your main overall idea guilt and despair, or is it hopefulness? Is it happiness about surviving a particular thing, or are you regretful? Have some sort of overarching kind of theme or idea, and then try to fit it and link it together. So in the example that we looked at, Max starts talking about how he left his mother, he abandoned his mother, and he feels that guilt and shame. And this monologue was set after he left the Hubermans. So then he links that to how he's gone and done it again. He's put people in danger and he's left them. And then he reflects on his guilt and feelings about that. So that fits the same sort of idea, which contributes to the flow. This is really important, is getting your paragraphing right. Do not hand in big chunks of writing. Your thoughts change a lot, so you will have a lot of small paragraphs. When your thought changes, start a new paragraph. If you've moved to somewhere else, if you've gone from sitting to standing, then you change the paragraph. So more paragraphs rather than less is important. Any new ideas linked by some sort of trigger, like what I talked about before? Does one thought or idea trigger another one, and then you move on to that? And then obviously stage directions as well. So you can use it as a cohesive device. So for example, you might be in a forest and then you decide to take a rest underneath a tree. So you could then use that in your stage direction as as a transition point for a new paragraph. All right, so that is all about your organization and structure. So that's very important as well. So make sure that you follow that and you use your scaffold that I gave you, which tells you, how to do that and what's expected in there. All right, and the lucky last one, textual features. So this one here is about language choices for particular purposes. So is your vocab suitable to the character? Make sure that you are using words that Rudy would say, he's a child, versus what Max would say, who was an adult. Rudy has different life experiences than Max. He doesn't know large, complex language, whereas Max does. You would be obviously including German words and terms in there, whereas Max might include some Yiddish, which is the Jewish language, in his monologue. So, do you sound like your character? Again, this is not about putting an accent on, but if you're like Liesel, for example, she says und instead of and. She says nine instead of no. So, Rosa calls Hans Sauerkerl, and she calls Liesel Saumensch. So when you're referring to those characters, use those kinds of nicknames or those insults, or those terms that those characters use. And again, you might have to go back to the movie and watch it again and write down some of the dialogue that is spoken by the characters. Definitely include some quotes in there as well. So if you're Max, you could say, I remember when Liesel told me that the moon looked like a silver oyster. This was the moment when blah, 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 blah. So use the important quotes. You have some of those already written down. Try to incorporate them into your monologue as well. Try to avoid swearing. There's not really any need for it. None of the characters really swear other than Rosa mutters some German profanity under her breath, and you could use that. But try to keep it minimal and make it suit the character. Right, so combination of grammatically accurate and appropriate language structures. So we're looking at sentence length. Is it varied? Does it show the character's mood? So if you are showing anxiousness or guilt or worry, you'd probably be using a lot of short sentences that sort of flit from one idea to the next. You might have a sentence or a word stop halfway through because your thought changes rapidly to something else. So you would use an ellipses to show that, which is your dot, dot, dot. You might have sentence fragments, which are parts of sentences to indicate indecisiveness, or you're uncertain about something, so you're varying that. Use short sentences for effect. Obviously, if you're in a reminiscent kind of mood where you're talking about something that was really important to you, like Max, for example, describing his first Christmas. In that case, because he's feeling really positive, reminiscent, and happy, I suppose, about that, he's probably writing more in long, complex, compound sentences rather than in a hurried sort of manner, which you would if you had short, simple, fragmented sentences. So make sure that you have some sort of variety in that, because it does show your tone and mood. Spelling's important, punctuation's important, and stage directions are super important. Bold and brackets for stage directions. If you miss those, you will get marked down on those. Now, if you are going to do a spoken version of your monologue, these are the things that we're looking for as well. So we want eye contact. So you need to learn your speech so that you are authentic as the character. So palm cards, if absolutely necessary, but try to be them. Vocal expression, so great tone, volume, pace. Your voice is going up and down to try to keep the audience engaged with that vocal variation. You've got body language that's relevant. So if your character's sad and dejected and upset, you might be, leaned over. Whereas if your character's really happy and proud and something has happened that's great for them, their shoulders are back, their their chin's high, and their facial expression is, one that's happy. So there's movement and there's actions, and your camera is not filming up your nose or like not showing your, waist up sort of thing, or your whole body. I want to be able to see your face. I also um, want to be able to see your actions as well. So if you're doing actions and you've got your camera at waist height and I can't see your hands, I can't see your actions. Use props. For example, I've had people in the past be Rosa, and they've done something simple like they're folding clothes, like folding laundry while they're doing their monologue and reflecting. I've had people in the past make an accordion out of two bits of cardboard, and then they've got another piece of cardboard, folded it up so it's jagged, and then they've glued it on either side, and it's a little accordion sort of thing. So you can handmade ones. You could be Rudy with a soccer ball. You could be Max with a book. You could have a blanket wrapped around you, or a cardigan or something like that. So try to make sure you use some sort of prop and some sort of costume that shows that your character is in, World War II. All right, so that's pretty much everything that you're getting marked on. This here is basically your Bible. Use it, write your monologue, and then go through and tick those things off. Have you done them, and have you done them well enough? Because this is what I'm marking when I mark your monologue. And you can also keep this for year 11 and 12 because it'd be very similar as well. All right, hopefully that has helped and you are not too bored by my voice. And I look forward to reading them. Thank you.